So the case is a midwife who, I have several videos about it on the second channel, but if you want to go like get caught up, you can. But in general, like overview, it's a person who had had a previous cesarean delivery and had distrust of hospitals and wanted to have a home birth and was pregnant with a breech baby. VBAC should not be a home midwife delivery. Breech should not be a home midwife delivery. Neither of those things on their own should happen at home with a midwife. Those things put together absolutely shouldn't happen on their own, period, at home. And then when you add in the footling breech, that's even worse. Okay, so that's what happened. And then the baby died. And the case is brought by the state against the midwife. The parents did not choose to do that.
Before we start, would you pull the microphone a little closer? Okay, you don't have to speak into it. Could you state and spell your name for the record?
James Morrison, James Morrison. And
what do you do for a living?
I'm a mobile firefighter.
How long have you been so employed?
19 years.
And do you have any special certifications?
I have EMTB certificate, firefighter 1 certificate, hazmat training. But as pertains to this case, the only medical training I have is EMTB.
Okay. And what, as it relates to your EMTB, is that EMT basic?
Yes, ma'am.
As part of that training, how much time did you spend on issues relating to labor and delivery?
There's an 8-hour block in that class on labor and delivery.
And as part of that 8-hour block, does it cover breech delivery?
No, ma'am.
Do you have any training or experience in assisting with breech deliveries?
No, ma'am.
What are your current duties?
I drive the fire truck. I'm a fire apparatus engineer. I've been driving fire truck for 16 years at this current location I'm at now.
And which station are you assigned to?
Station 41, 4515 North 61st Street.
Is it part of the normal part of getting a call that records are generated?
Yes, ma'am.
And part of that is it fair to say, taken from the 911 call?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then part of that would be manually entered by some of the individuals who respond. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Were you on duty on June 15th, 2019?
Yes, I was.
Same station 41?
Same station 41.
And who all was on shift that night?
Myself, firefighter Brian Strausses, Captain Lou Isold, and I believe firefighter Jay Chandler was there as well. On the med unit was Captain Paramedic Dave Hurd and firefighter Paramedic Matt Carroll.
And what's different about the med unit?
Captions on.
They're trained above and beyond of what our training is. They're paramedics. Their schooling is a year long compared to our 120-hour class. Theirs is a year-long class.
Approximately 9:26, did you receive a dispatch for service?
Yes, we did.
And where were you dispatched to?
I don't recall the address, but I know there's a report ahead. If I could review that, please.
If the report indicated that it was 4826 Spalding, would that sound familiar?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And is that within, the closest station would be Station 41?
Correct.
Is that within Douglas County?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And did you in fact respond to that house?
Yes, we did.
What information did you have when you arrived?
We got dispatched to a maternity problem. On the way to the call, dispatch gives us updates on via radio, and via the radio to traffic. Dispatch advised that baby was born, breech baby with the feet and everything exposed except for the head.
In the evaluation of that type of call, where does that fall?
That's a high priority call.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. That is a high priority call. What he's describing is a breech delivery and the feet and everything are exposed, which means either the baby has been born up to the point where the feet were able to come out, or the baby was born with a breech footling presentation, which is the most dangerous type of breech that you could deliver, whether in or out of a hospital. This is a thing of OBGYN nightmares. So
when you arrived at the home, what equipment did you all take in?
We took our trauma box from the med unit. They arrived with us. We took our OBGYN kit, which is a birthing kit we have for any babies that are born. We took our airway bag in for the O2 for in case you need any airway assistance, and that was it at that time.
Do you have any stretchers? Do you have any stretchers that you took in?
At that time, we did not take the stretcher in.
Okay. Where are you in the order of individuals arriving from EMS to the house? That might be a bad question. Let me try again. 6 people who arrived from EMS, correct?
Correct.
Do you all go inside?
We do.
And which order?
I don't recall the order. I know I was second or third in line. I was carrying the trauma box up the stairs to the second floor of the house. It was a 2-story house.
When you get to the top of the stairs, what do you see?
I see a female on her hands and knees with a baby hanging out and the birth person holding the baby at that time.
Why do you say birth person?
She was wearing a pink shirt that said Nebraska Birthing Center or Clinic. I can't remember the name of that.
If report indicated Nebraska birth keepers, would that be correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When you observe this scene, what's your first reaction?
This ain't good.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Well, a breach.
Honestly, truer words have never been spoken. Can you tell if a baby is footling by doing a sonogram? Yes, you can. Yes, and they knew this baby was breech before they decided to deliver it at home. This was an intentional breech VBAC at home.
Breech baby is not a good situation anyways. You don't want to spend much time there. You want to try to get the baby out if you can. If you can't, then take the baby to the hospital, get its best care as possible because it's not receiving the kind of care it needed at the place it was at that time.
When you first make this observation, do you see the woman wearing the pink shirt doing anything?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Did you receive any information whether any procedures had been done to try to assist the delivery?
There were no. Well, we got to the top of the stairs, and at that point, the female in the pink shirt asked for a pair of scissors. At that time, firefighter paramedic Matt Carroll advised we have scalpel in our OB/GYN kit. It's a sterile scalpel. The scissors we have in a trauma box are unsterile. They're trauma scissors used for traumas such as shootings, car wrecks, to cut clothes off people, not to cut skin and tissue.
Okay. So the woman in the pink shirt, do you see her in court here today?
Yes, I do, ma'am.
Could you point out what she's wearing and where she's sitting?
She's wearing a white and black polka dot, leopard print shirt and sitting next to the gentleman in the beard and the female jacket.
Let the record reflect the witness identify the defendant. You indicated the defendant asked for scissors.
Yes, ma'am.
And that was the first contact you recall?
Yes, ma'am.
As an EMT basic, are you allowed to perform anything with?
So she's asking for scissors, presumably to do an episiotomy, which, in my personal opinion, is not going to help rectify the situation at all. When a baby is delivered to this point and is stuck in the cervix, you're not going to, or in the pelvis, you're not going to make more room by doing an episiotomy, which is a cut on the perineum. That's, I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that was, unless it was just panic.
Scissors? Well, let me one step back. Did you have any idea what she was going to do with the scissors?
Not at that time.
What happened?
She performed an episiotomy on the female at that time with them scissors.
Was it successful?
I'm not a trained professional, ma'am. I don't know if it was what a successful episiotomy is and what unsuccessful. I apologize.
Were you able to?
I am a professional, and I don't know what a successful episiotomy is versus unsuccessful. Were they able to do it? Is that a successful one? I don't know what that means.
Observe whether the patient had any reaction.
Yes, it was a horrific scream that I will never forget.
Did you learn the patient's name?
I don't recall the patient's name.
What happened after the scream you'll never forget?
We attempted one more time at the top of the stairwell to deliver the baby. That attempt was unsuccessful. At that time, Captain Hurd ordered me to go down and get a bot. We call it a big orange thing.
Chat asked if maybe the episiotomy was to make room for hands to do another maneuver, and I understand that reasoning, and that might make sense like in a shoulder dystocia, but there's not anything that you can do that would resolve a breech head entrapment that your hands, I think, would help with. I don't know. I don't know. I can't speak to what the attempt was. In the absence of having forceps to put on this baby's head, I don't think you're going to make a difference with your hands if there's a head entrapment. Why would they keep her attempting to deliver? Why wouldn't they throw in a truck and make getaway to the closest hospital. Because the baby is delivered to here, meaning the umbilical cord is all the way out and it's traveling this way and almost certainly compressed. The chances of being able to get a person who has already had this baby delivered for a bit of time to the head into an ambulance and from the ambulance to the hospital before something bad happens is nearly impossible. You're not going to... It's unlikely this is going to end well, but it's pretty unlikely it would end well even if you could get to a hospital in 6 or 7 minutes. Does that make sense? So at that point, like, the best thing that could happen is somehow this baby comes out.
The nickname bot, it's a soft stretcher, like soft hardboard. You know, like if you guys seen on TV, people get put on a hardboard. This
Yes,
one's a soft
the
one
episiotomy would hurt.
It's more flexible and we can maneuver around the stairs and stuff to carry someone out on.
Okay. Who did you get the bot?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
And once you got the bot, what'd you do?
Took it back into the house. At that time, we assisted putting the mother and the baby onto the bot.
How'd that happen?
Laid her on her back. And then, I don't recall what firefighter was supporting the baby at that time. Put her on the bot, strapped her in, and they carried her downstairs and put her on our stretcher that was out in the front yard.
How did she go down the stairs? Feet first or head first?
Feet first, I believe.
Do you recall carrying that stretcher?
Carrying the stretcher or the bot?
The stretcher. The bot once the
The
patient was
backboard?
loaded.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Were you at the...
It is just occurring to me how horrific it would be as a mother to be delivering my child, have this happen, baby is trapped, and I have to be put on a backboard with my baby delivered to the head and carried down the stairs while still painfully laboring, I am sure, and now with an episiotomy as well that's likely bleeding. And now the paramedics have to carry me down the stairs. Horrible. Awful.
I was at
Bottom
the
part
foot
of the
of it.
stairs?
Yes.
About how much time do you think passed from arriving at the house to carrying the patient out on the backboard?
I'd say no more than probably 10 minutes, but there's official records on that. If I could refresh that, please.
Is that information logged in your report?
It is.
There is a copy of a report in front of you. If you could turn it over and review that when you're ready to answer questions, turn it face down and look up.
This doesn't have the current times that the one that we printed off at the fire station has, ma'am. That would have the current accurate times.
May approach. So is it fair to say that there's a report that EMTs do and then a report that paramedics do?
That is correct.
Okay, I'm going to hand you this 2-page document, 2 of 5 pages. You could review that. Are you familiar with what that is?
Yes, it is. It's our patient care report off our RMS system.
And that's,
or EMS charts is what it's called.
And that's the report that the paramedics would have completed?
That is correct.
And it has additional times listed on that report, is that correct?
That's correct, because them times are associated with the med unit, them times are associated with the fire truck.
Okay, so I'm just going to have you review these 2 pages, and when you're ready to answer questions, look up.
It was 9 minutes, ma'am.
And what time do you guys log arriving at scene?
When we arrive on location, we key the mic and tell dispatch, engine 41, med 41 on location. And then it's logged in the CAD system at 911 dispatch.
And that's, so when you pull up to the house?
Correct, ma'am.
Okay. And then time to leave, is that, well, do you add any of those times?
Manually, or
You,
what was your...
You notify dispatch of when you're
Correct.
when you
The
arrive?
person driving the med unit, it will notify dispatch, med 41's en route, med center, and what code they're going.
Okay. At the time, and I want to slow this down just a little bit, at the time that you loaded the patient onto the bot, was the defendant providing any information to you?
No.
And did she come in the ambulance?
No, I personally advised her that we were going to go to the med center and that she should ride along with us because she stated, or she did a procedure that's above and beyond our protocol. Anytime that happens, it's required by our protocol that the person that initiates that care is to ride along, such as there's a car wreck, a doctor, a nurse that initiates medical care above and beyond our paramedic and EMT protocol. They ride along to continue that care, so it's not abandonment of that patient.
Okay. And What was the procedure that was above your care?
Episiotomy, that's above the paramedic care as well.
And based on the episiotomy and the defendant's actions when you arrived, did you believe that she was a trained medical professional?
Yes, ma'am.
That had additional or more training and certification than you were the paramedics?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What was her response to your request that she ride along?
She was not going to the hospital.
What did she say?
No, she was not going to the hospital.
How did you respond?
I said, okay.
Is that unusual to you?
Yes.
Why?
Someone that has...
Once the patient arrived in the ambulance, did you assist in transport? Did you assist in getting her into the ambulance?
Yes.
And did you ride in the ambulance?
I did not, ma'am.
What did you follow to the hospital? Well, let me rephrase that. Did you go to the hospital?
I did go to the hospital. I drive the fire truck, so obviously we can't leave the fire truck at the house and have everyone help out. So I drove the fire truck to the med center. Okay. I led actually, firefighter Strauss drove the med unit. I followed him through that neighborhood to get him out of that neighborhood. At that time, that neighborhood was under sewer and water separation construction, so there were several closed roads that we were unaware of at the time, so that delayed our response to the hospital.
When you arrived at the hospital, did you provide any information to medical providers as to the events that had happened?
I did. The nurse asked, one of the caregiving nurses asked what was going on. They were kind of confused what's going on. We stated that a midwife, is that the correct term? I'm sorry. A female helping give birth at home performed this procedure, started this procedure. She waited over an hour to call 911.
Objection.
How did you?
Facts.
How did you? Where did you receive the information that it was over an hour before 911 was called?
From the family member and the female.
The female patient or the female defendant?
The female defendant.
Okay. And tell me about that conversation.
That they waited an hour to call 911 and finally decided to call 911.
Okay, so they're saying that there was a delay from calling. He's brought me this, but he left my door open as... Okay, so that's too much. The light... Okay, so he's alleging that they waited too long to call and that he got that information from the midwife. Somebody in the chat earlier was asking about, let's see where I saw that question. So what happens if the head gets stuck? Does the baby suffocate? Someone else had said earlier, I can't see where the question is, but is the cord getting stuck the worst thing that can happen in this scenario? So I wanted to kind of go over with a model what this means. So if you imagine that the umbilical cord is attached here, when a baby comes out this way, as you can tell with this very realistic depiction, the head is the biggest part, and so as you go through the cervix, the rest of the body should follow easily. Now, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. Your shoulders are usually wider, and in babies it's not quite as pronounced as in adults, but your shoulders typically are wider than the head, but your shoulders are collapsible. So they can also get stuck in a vaginal delivery that's a head down baby, but it's just less likely. As compared to, you have a breech baby that comes out like this, bottom first. You have relative similarity between the size of the head and the body as the baby comes through the cervix. So it still can be scary and dangerous and the head can still get stuck. It's just less likely. But when you have a baby, and this baby's feet do not point down like they should, but when it comes out feet first, imagine human legs, and they come out first, you could have that come through a cervix that's not fully dilated. And then it gets to here, and then the head is trapped. This is called a head entrapment. The umbilical cord is here, and it has to come up through this way or around this way back to the placenta. To the placenta. And so it doesn't have to be compressed, but if you imagine that this is so tight that the head can't come through, either in the pelvis or in the cervix, it's likely that there's some element of compression along the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord is what gives oxygen to the baby. It doesn't need to breathe, so it's not a problem of suffocation as we would imagine it. It's a problem of hypoxia, lack of oxygenation, through compression of the umbilical cord. And that can happen fairly quickly depending on how compressed that cord is. And that's all dependent on the thickness of the cord, where it's tracking in this cervix, like through the cervix, through the pelvis, how tight that squeeze is, if it happens to be right next to, you know, the head where the head's stuck, or if it happens to be somewhere else. The amount of compression is going to be different in each situation. But does that make sense as far as footling breech is scarier because the feet are the smallest part, and frank breech or complete breech is less scary because you have more similarity in size. Head down is usually safest, but you still can get a shoulder stuck because of that, but they collapse. What would you do to fix that in a normal situation? So if you had a vaginal breech delivery in a hospital with a well-trained doctor, fixing a head entrapment is still very difficult, but you have a few options. You want to see what the head is stuck on. Is it the cervix is around like here, or is it stuck in the pelvis? If it's stuck in the pelvis, well, yeah, I mean, regardless, usually your first thing that you're going to do is something called Piper's forceps. I'll see if I can find a picture. So baby's out to this point, head is stuck. This is depicting the head being stuck in the pelvis. So this is the bony pelvis. Now, when I was saying you can't really do anything earlier as far as if you had more space to put your hands in, I guess in theory you could potentially do a maneuver where you put your hand in and put your hand like this on that chin. It's hard to do effectively, but if you can get your hand on the chin kind of like this, and imagine making the baby look down, sometimes that will help the baby come under the pubic bone if that's what it's caught on. Let's see if they don't have any other pictures of that there. So there are other things that you can do, which are maneuvers. I don't think you normally would need to do an episiotomy to do these. And also at the point where she did that, I would have like she would have already tried that if she knew what she was going to do. But this is another maneuver where they're trying to rotate the baby to come out. And the other is this very terrible picture of Piper's forceps, and you would place the forceps on either side, and that helps to flex the neck and hopefully come out that way. Make sense? None of these things would be easily done with somebody at home with no anesthetic by someone who has probably never cared for someone that had a head entrapment.
Was that in response to a question? Or was that information volunteered to you?
The information was volunteered to my best of knowledge.
And when the defendant said that they waited an hour to call, what was your reaction?
My personal reaction is...
Professionally, was that important to you?
Professionally, yes. That was way too long.
Was that against training that you had received? You can answer.
Yes, that was against any training that I would have received.
And at the time when did this conversation take place?
At the top of the stairwell.
Before or after you got the bot?
Prior.
Did you have any other conversation with the defendant?
Other than advising her that we're going to the med center, if she needs to ride with us, no.
Did the defendant instruct you to take the patient to the med center?
No, that the med center is, excuse me, I don't recall if she advised to take us there, but the med center is the Catchment Center Hospital. It's a trauma center, level 1 trauma center, and it was the closest hospital at that time.
And a poorly formed question. So at the time that you and the paramedics decide it's time to take the patient out of the home, was that at the direction of the defendant?
I don't believe so. I believe it was in the direction of common sense of getting the person to the best medical care that was required.
He's like, she's not in charge of us. They called, they asked us for help, and we decided to help in the only way that we could, which was leaving.
Is it part of your routine duties to update the medical staff at hospital as to what had happened on scene?
Yes, that's called transfer of care to the facility.
And was there any other information you provided as part of the transfer of care?
Not myself personally, other than letting them know that the female that started this procedure would not come to the hospital. Paramedic Hurd and Paramedic Mac.
Your only information was that the person who started the procedure would not come, is that correct? Okay. And then perhaps some of the other squad members would have provided other information?
Correct.
Okay. After you updated the hospital for the transfer of care, did you have any other involvement in this run?
No.
Okay. Did all these events occur in Douglas County?
Yes, ma'am.
I have no further questions at this time.
Can I take a drink of water?
Thank you, sir. Do you prefer to be addressed as firefighter or officer?
There's something a little bit endearing about this big burly firefighter EMT being so nervous to even get a drink of water that he asked permission from the judge.
Doesn't matter, sir.
Officer, during recess, before you took the stand, did you have a conversation with Brian Strassis in the hallway?
Yes, I did.
Who was present for that conversation?
Straws. That was it.
No one else was present for that conversation?
Not with him. I were carrying on a conversation, no.
What did you talk about?
I just asked him how the case went and what it was like in there, and he said it was good. That's all.
Were you advised of the sequestration order in place here?
I don't know what that is, sir.
So fair to say you weren't advised that there was a sequestration order in place?
I still don't know what that is, sir.
Officer, when you arrived at the house, you stated that you were...
He's like, not only did I not know that that was a thing that was in place, I don't know what it means still to this very day as I sit here. And the attorney just keeps going like, don't worry, I'm not going to tell you.
The second person in the door, is that correct?
Up the stairs,
Up
carrying
the
the trauma
stairs.
box.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Who was in front of you?
Captain Paramedic Hurd.
And Paramedic Hurd immediately initiated care with the patient?
He assessed the situation first before he immediately initiated care.
And how long does a scene assessment, or did this scene assessment take?
That'd be a question for the paramedic captain, sir.
Well, the purpose of a scene assessment is to ensure the safety of the
That's understood.
EMS,
I understand that, yes, but that's the person in charge of that scene was Paramedic Captain Dave Hurd, not myself.
In your recollection, was he assessing the scene for minutes?
That's hearsay, isn't it?
Please answer the question.
Not minutes, no.
Seconds?
Could be seconds. I mean, it's a
Assessing-
hypothetical question.
Would assessing a scene and where there's no obvious dangers to EMS personnel typically take more than a matter of seconds, or at least less than a minute?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. After Paramedic Hurd assessed the scene, did he immediately initiate care?
I believe he did, yes. That's a question for him, not for me, sir.
Was your observations of his actions consistent with the paramedic who was initiating care?
Yes.
Officer, you testified that you had no training or experience in breech birth, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Are you familiar with the Nebraska EMS model protocols on a complicated delivery?
What edition of that, sir?
The one that is revised on 12/7/2012, originally last revised 6/7/2019.
No, sir. I took my EMT class in 2003, before that edition.
Are you aware that there are protocols that apply to your conduct as an EMT on the job?
Yes, sir.
And are you aware that there is a protocol concerning a complicated delivery?
No, I was not aware of that, sir. No. Like I said, that was before my training I took.
Is it your understanding of the protocols for an EMT responding to a breech birth that transport should be initiated as soon as possible?
Well, look at that. Their protocol actually goes against apparently what I said we would do in this scenario. So, I mean, I don't know what the protocol is, but it didn't sound like it was a long time before, and I don't think it's crazy. I mean, what were they supposed to do? Snatch her up from the midwife? It sounds like the midwife was like doing an episiotomy. Like, I don't, like, how is this the EMT's fault in any way? And how, did they say how long it was before they, like, for one, this isn't the EMT's fault, right? Like, we wouldn't be in this situation if the midwife had made good decisions. But two, did they say how long it was between arriving and her leaving? Nine minutes from arrival to leaving? I mean, and they had to get her on a stretcher or on a backboard with a baby hanging out and carry her downstairs? I mean, I get it, and I guess probably I'm a bit biased in saying, like, by the time you get to the hospital, there's nothing you could do, because I'm imagining myself in that scenario, and I'm thinking, like, well, I would be trying to get the baby out, but also I know, like, how to do the maneuvers that I showed you. I know how to use forceps. I wouldn't have had them, but I can see why their protocol would be, this is, like, a situation where even the emergency room doctors aren't going to have any good training on this, so we need to get you somewhere where there's actually people who can do something. But I don't know. I don't like them trying, and I know it's their job to defend their client, but I don't like them trying to cast doubt. My leg is hurting. To me, it all comes back to, we wouldn't be in this situation, and it wouldn't matter how long it took to get her out the door if the midwife had not said it was fine to deliver this known breech VBAC at home. After the hour of delay, I'm not sure that the defense should be focused on this couple of minutes it takes to get a gravid woman on a backboard down the stairs. Yeah, half gravid, right? Like, you're half delivered. It seems anyone on that jury who gave an ounce of thought to the fact that it was an hour before she actually called and should have, if you're implying that the 9 minutes it took to get her out the door was the problem, like, hello, what about the 60 minutes before that?
I believe the best option at that time was for them paramedics to try to deliver that baby, to get it out and breathing. They attempted that first, and then we transported the baby and mom as soon as that was attempted, and after the episiotomy.
To your knowledge, is that the protocol applicable to a EMT or a paramedic who responds to a breech birth to attempt to successfully complete the birth?
I can't state for a paramedic protocol, but I would say that would be in our prior EMT protocol. I would assume so.
Are you familiar with a procedure that EMTs are directed, that is in the protocol for EMTs, where 2 fingers are inserted vaginally, making a V shape and pushing the vaginal wall from the nose or mouth during a breech birth to try to create an airway? Are you familiar with that procedure?
I'm not familiar with that procedure, but Captain...
Hello, what? He's asking if the paramedics should have been doing that? I'm sorry, but I just am not sure that I agree with that. I don't think that a paramedic who has probably... Oh, no. I think I just accidentally banned someone. If I just... I'm sorry if I accidentally banned you. It wasn't on purpose. No! Help! Are there any mods here who can fix that and tell her I'm sorry, or him I'm sorry, or them? Okay, I fixed it, I think. Sorry, I didn't mean to ban whoever I banned. That was an accident. I still don't even know how I ended up on a place where I could accidentally do that. I'm sorry. I'm a doctor, y'all. I'm not a streamer. That was funny. I also, like, if I hadn't realized I did that and I just banned you and you were saying, like, no, I'm not getting any ads. Why is everybody else getting ads and I'm not getting ads? And then all of a sudden I'm like, ban, watch the ads or I'm banning you. That was funny. Thank you, everybody. Back to what we're talking about. Anyway, if the baby is stuck, like we were looking at earlier, where the head's in the vagina and stuck because of the pelvis, you can press the vaginal wall away from the face so that maybe if the baby can breathe, it can try to breathe. And I just can't imagine that would be the EMT's job, right? So, like, that's not my job as an obstetrician because I have other ways to get the baby out. And I guess in an emergency where I was waiting for other people because I needed more hands and nobody was there, that maybe I would do that. But my goal would be moving to get the baby out. But yeah, I think a person who's exhausted their skill set could move to that as an option that may or may not help if they can get the baby to breathe while still partly inside. However, I'm questioning this because why would it be the EMT's job to do that if the midwife is the trained professional attending this delivery and is not doing it? Like, you're at that point deferring to someone who should have more training than you on this topic. And that would be like me having a midwife come in. They've asked, I've asked a midwife for help because I need an extra set of hands or we need to go somewhere else. And then I'm sued and I try to say like, well, the midwife should have been doing this or that. And I'm like, no, I'm the most trained person in this room. I don't get to blame a bad outcome on somebody who's less trained than me. I'm the one that carries the blame if I'm at the top of the skill set here. And I can't imagine that's a part of EMT basic training.
Been heard attempted to insert some fingers in the vaginal area, and there was no room at that time. He attempted to do that, a paramedic.
So they did try to do that. Midwife hadn't done that.
From what you could see, that was not possible.
From what I was seeing, correct, that is not possible.
When in the sequence of events did Captain Hurd attempt that maneuver?
I would say after you're saying of the assessment of the scene, right after that.
Before the attempted episiotomy?
Yes, sir.
So, if Captain Hurd attempted this maneuver we just described, you'd agree with me that he definitely initiated care prior to the episiotomy procedure?
I was assumed, yes, initiate care, but yes.
Officer, once you initiate care, does that create certain obligations or duty to you as a responding EMS personnel?
Yes.
Is one of those duties to protect your patient?
Yes.
If you believe that a third party present at the scene was attempting to do something to your patient that was harmful to them, you would attempt to stop them, wouldn't you?
I'm like, excuse me, sir, am I the one on trial here?
At that time, I thought it was a trained professional medical personnel that was there. That was above and beyond our protocol and care, so I didn't have any concerns.
Did you or anyone else ask Mrs. Hock what her training might be?
At that time of chaos, no.
It's fair to say that Mrs. Hock was acting in a manner consistent with someone who knew their way around childbirth?
No. Let me answer for you. Absolutely not. She was not acting in a manner consistent with someone who knew their way around childbirth because she wouldn't have been in that situation if she was.
From what I've seen of childbirth, yes, at that time.
And so
I feel like they should be objecting too. Like, he's like, I don't freaking know. I don't do episiotomies. I didn't know what she was doing. This isn't my job.
Decision to allow that to continue.
Diesel is the best medicine. I like it.
You would agree with me that had you brought the bot in immediately to the scene, that you could have initiated transport sooner?
There's only so many people to carry so many things. We had to see what we were getting into at first. We don't know what we're getting into. Once we realized what we need, what was going on, we went out and got the bot.
Well, you testified that you received word on the radio that this was a breech birth, correct?
Correct.
And you testified that that was...
But breech births come in many forms, okay? So sometimes you might get called and they're like, hey, oh my gosh, I am at my house, I just went into labor, and I see a foot, and that's all that's out. Or you might have somebody who's a midwife call and say, hey, my client's in labor, she's been laboring all day, I just checked her, and I can feel a butt, we need to go to the hospital. You don't commonly get called because somebody has delivered a breech baby up to the head. This is like a once in a career call.
In an urgent emergency situation.
Correct.
High risk.
Correct.
And as you understand the protocols, at least for you as an EMTB,
can somebody who is understanding of what that is, the BOT, like what would you use it for? Nope, I don't think he means a robot. They're orange. A rescue basket. This is career ending as in I will quit due to trauma. Yeah, that's... BOT is like a stretcher. Big orange basket or backboard. Okay, so is it safe to assume, those of you who have experience with... Yeah, that he wasn't talking about this. No, I'm kidding. I know it wasn't that. Is it safe then to assume that the reason they wouldn't have taken that is because they're getting called for a breech birth. They don't know what's happening, and they aren't expecting that this patient would not be ambulatory. Like, they would expect that this patient would be able to move. It's not a trauma, right? So they're used traumas generally for removing people who can't safely leave. Is that why they would leave it and not take it in? They don't know she's upstairs. They think they can just roll a stretcher up and get her. Like, I'm assuming that they didn't take it because they wouldn't expect this is a person that needs to be immobilized in order to be moved. Okay, I'm gonna, I think that's probably...
Would be to transport quickly?
That's correct. But from the time of dispatch to the time we got there, we didn't know if the baby was born, if the baby was still breached. We're not relevant to that information until we get and assess the scene.
You had 6 EMS personnel on scene, correct?
Correct.
Based on your experience responding to based on your experience, when there's an urgent call and a report of a serious medical situation, you would anticipate that you're going to transport, you would presume that you're going to transport that patient, correct?
That's correct.
Is it your testimony today that none of the 6 EMS personnel who responded had a spare hand to bring this bot in?
Is this what you're talking about? Is this what they're talking about?
Can you repeat the question, sir? I'm sorry.
Is it your testimony today that none of the 6 EMS personnel, when they initially entered that home, had a free hand to carry the bot inside?
Someone could have grabbed the bot, yes, but at that time that was not the priority of getting the bot into the house. The priority was assessing the situation with the time of lapsed of being breached and the time 911 was called for us to get the baby, see what's going on.
So you'd agree with me that the act of you being told at the top of the stairs to get the bot required you to take time to go down the stairs, go out the door, go to your truck, get the bot, and reverse that journey back up the stairs?
Yes, in a matter of 30 seconds.
45 seconds?
Down the stairs to the front yard and back upstairs. That doesn't...
You'd agree with me in an emergency situation, every second can be precious?
Yes, but basic care was still going on at that time. It wasn't effective. It didn't matter if the bot was there or not there at that time.
You'd agreed with me that you couldn't transport the patient without the bot?
That's true.
I kind of feel like if I was him, and I know he can't do this, he's just answering questions, but I would be like, okay, you know what? You're right. We should have taken the bot in with us. All right. But, do you think this changed the outcome? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, do you think that that 35 seconds changed the outcome? Or did perhaps the 1 hour prior to that change the outcome? And perhaps did maybe, you know, the weeks of planning a vaginal breech delivery VBAC at home perhaps change the outcome? I rest my case.
Officer, are you aware that you are a mandatory reporter?
Of?
Are you aware that you're a mandatory reporter with respect to suspected child abuse?
Yes.
And is it your understanding that if you suspect child abuse or neglect, that it is your duty to report or cause a report to be made to law enforcement?
Okay, Attorney Manbun. This is too far. This is ridiculous.
That would be my duty to inform my superior officer, and then they do that. As a driver, I respond to Captain Isold and Captain Dave Hurd, and then they would make the report.
Did you cause a report to be made with law enforcement?
I did not know.
If you believed that child abuse or neglect had occurred on a call you responded to, would you make a report to law enforcement?
Again, I would have to follow chain of command.
So your understanding is that you aren't directly required to report to law enforcement, but that it is sufficient for you to inform a superior?
Objection asked and answered.
In a work environment, we follow the chain of command.
This is why I could never be an attorney, because defending someone in this way would...
That's what we would do. In a non-work environment, yes, I would. If there was something on my day off and something that occurred, I would initiate law enforcement to make a report.
This is ridiculous, because the child endangerment is the decision to have this birth happen at home, right? So how did he didn't have the background to know that. Like, for all he know, at the moment he walked in that door, this person could have just gone into labor and their friend, a midwife, happened to be there, and now it's an emergency and they called. He didn't have that background. This is such a stupid way to take this.
Are you aware of protocols that should be followed by EMS when they respond to a scene concerning establishing who is the highest credentialed or trained personnel at that scene?
Repeat the question, sir.
When you respond to a scene and there are other people giving aid, are there protocols you follow?
Yes.
And is the protocol that the person with the highest medical training should take the lead in providing that care?
Yes.
And you spoke, I believe, about...
Thank you for the measured input, the Dr. Blue. The defense attorney is doing what they can indeed, but this seems fairly typical cross-examination to discredit, the witness and the testimony from various angles. I know it's their job. I know it's his job. Attorney Manbun, I am aware it's your job. I don't like your job.
Abandonment or transfer of care earlier, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And is your understanding that that concerns when a licensed medical professional is transferring care, that if they transfer that care, it must be to someone?
Yeah, is that I increased it earlier when someone asked, but I can certainly increase it. And again, people were saying it was too loud earlier, so I'll increase it. And I'll turn off the music. I didn't realize I still had the music on, but I'll increase it and tell me if it's too loud.
One with a higher
it's fairly
degree of
quiet
training.
on my side.
That's correct.
And you testify that no one determined the qualifications of Mrs. Hock?
At the time, no.
No further questions.
Very briefly, at the start of your cross-examination, you were asked about talking with Stratus. Did you talk about anything concerning the topic of his testimony?
No.
So you were asked about continuation of care and if somebody's already treating a patient when you arrive on scene. Is there, as part of the procedure of assuming care, is there a procedure that the person who has already initiated care is to identify themselves?
Yes, and give a report of what they've been doing.
Okay. Also, what their credentials are? Hi, I'm so-and-so, I'm a doctor.
Yes.
Did you get that here?
No.
You saw the T-shirt, saw that the person was doing procedures that you wouldn't be able to do. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And based on those observations, did you presume that the defendant had a higher level of training than you did?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And that was based on your direct observations?
Yes, ma'am.
You talked about a chaotic scene. 6 firemen, the patient with the baby hanging out, and a midwife at the top of the stairs. You talked about, was there a lot of other discussion going on during this time frame? Or was it
discussion
simply,
of?
Was it?
This is off topic, but someone says we should have tiny carrot merch in addition to Lumi the light fetus. And do y'all know that I used to have a sticker? Here's the original baby carrot, by the way, for those who've been here a while. I don't sell these anymore. I mean, I only sold it like I think it was like probably 2019 maybe that we had them, but we had these little, for those who were around when we used to play Find the Item in the YouTube channels. They are super cute. Somebody made that for me back in the day when I was new on YouTube.
Was a discussion, a calm discussion of, hey, you know, I've tried this, maybe we should try this next, or was it just, we need to move?
It was a calm discussion. I mean, people call 911.
That's such a great point. Where someone said in the chat, these midwives advertise themselves as super competent and safe, and then in court they're always like, I'm incompetent and you should have known that.
The worst day of their life, and then we show up and they expect us to fix it. So
you indicated you were asked a number of questions about that 30 seconds it took you to go get the bot, and you stated that there was ongoing patient care at that time.
Yes, ma'am.
What specifically was going on when you went to get the bot?
They were trying to still perform paramedic care on paramedic herd. We're still trying to get the baby out at that time.
And then my last question, you were asked by defense that you can't transport somebody without the bot. Is that fair?
That's fair.
So if you get somebody out of a burning building, you have to get the bot first?
That's true. No, you don't. You just carry them out.
Okay, so you don't always have to have the bot.
No.
I don't have anything further.
I get my necklace.
You're on the second channel. Make sure you subscribe. If you're subscribed to my main channel, you might not be subscribed to MJJ Clips, so make sure you're subscribed down below so you don't miss out on any of the fun.